What happened over the past year shouldn't have happened. I take responsibility for it. We need to make sure that my government or any government going forward never is in that situation again.
Tonight, Prime Minister Trudeau did interfere with the decision of the Attorney General, says the government's own ethics commissioner. Good evening, I'm Brittany Hobson. This is APTN National News. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau used his position to influence then Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould to intervene in the SNC Lavalin case. That's the bombshell Ethics Commissioner Mario Dion unleashed in a 44-page report today. And with an election 2 months away, it couldn't come at a worse time for Trudeau and the Liberal Party. Joining me from Ottawa is the host of APTN's political show, Nation to Nation, Todd Lamarand. Thanks for joining us, Todd. The Ethics Commissioner found that Prime Minister Trudeau had breached the Conflict of Interest Act. How did he respond?
Well, Brittany, the Prime Minister was in Niagara-on-the-Lakes, Ontario for an infrastructure announcement, but he did take questions from the media, and they were all about this. And what he said was that he fully accepted the report and would take full responsibility. But he didn't agree with all of what Mr. Dion reported on, especially when Dion said that any contact with Jody Wilson-Raybould was improper. Now, Trudeau said that when he contacted Jody Wilson-Raybould, he was defending Canadian jobs when he did so. Here's what he had to say.
My job as a Prime Minister is to stand up for Canadians and defend their interests. And yes, it is essential that we do that in a way that defends our institutions, that upholds prosecutorial independence. But we need to be able to talk about the impacts on Canadians right across the country of decisions being made. But I accept the report that the Commissioner put forward, and even in advance of this report, a number of months ago, I tasked former Attorney General Anne McClellan to gather a group of experts, including many former Attorneys General and academics and political experts, to weigh in on this question.
What did Trudeau mean when he talked about former Attorneys Generals weighing in on the question?
He's referring to a report by Anne McClellan, which just happened to get released shortly before this press conference. Earlier this year, there was a lot of talk about separating the role of Attorney General from Minister of Justice, to not even have the Attorney General attend cabinet meetings, for example, so that the Attorney General be completely free of political interference. Now, the McClellan report didn't go that far. It did recommend some changes. For example, the Attorney General take a separate and additional oath to the Minister of Justice. But she didn't go so far as to want two different people having two different positions. Now, Conservative leader Andrew Scheer didn't give the report any weight during his press conference.
What did the opposition make of the Dion report?
Not surprising, since the election is so soon. He said that Scheer said that it proves Trudeau should not serve as Prime Minister any longer. Scheer also believes that there should be an RCMP investigation. But he's no longer calling for Trudeau's resignation. Here's some of his remarks.
He clearly put his own partisan interests ahead of the democratic institutions that have served this country so well for over 150 years. He made the decision to stay in office. Now the decision is in the hands of Canadians on October 21st, and I believe that Canadians will make the right choice to get rid of a scandal-plagued Prime Minister who uses the power of his office to silence his critics and reward his friends.
Now, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was campaigning in Vancouver and basically said not to trust either the Liberals or Conservatives. You may recall the NDP wanted a public inquiry into the whole matter, but didn't get anywhere. But he did have a unique suggestion I didn't hear anywhere else.
That as soon as any corporation is facing a criminal charge, that they are no longer allowed to lobby with the government. That would be a clear rule, and that's an engagement, that's a commitment that I put in my vision document, that if a corporation is faced with a criminal charge, they're no longer allowed to lobby and meet with the government in that manner. That's just one step we can take, but really, when it comes to this matter, whether we have the Conservatives or Liberals in power, both of them seem to have this track record where they don't get that their job is to work for people, not for the people at the very top. And they're not working for the benefits of everyday families, they're working to make it easier for the multimillionaires, and that's really what I think is at the heart of this matter.
Now, what does Jody Wilson-Raybould think of all of this?
Now, late this afternoon, she released a statement, which I got here in my hand, and a lot of what she says in the statement is similar to testimony she gave earlier this year before the Justice Committee. However, she does contradict what we heard the Prime Minister just say, and I'm going to quote, "Contrary to a narrative that has been advanced by others, there was no evidence that I failed to consider the, quote, public interest, unquote, in making my decision not to intervene. Indeed, the Commissioner confirms the steps I took, including consultations with several former Attorneys General, to obtain guidance and advice."
Okay, thank you, Todd.
You're welcome.
The Liberals now have a candidate to run in Vancouver-Granville, a key riding where incumbent Jody Wilson-Raybould is seeking re-election as an independent. Tech entrepreneur Talib Nur Mohammed has been acclaimed as the Liberal vying to unseat the former Justice Minister. Wilson-Raybould rocked the Trudeau government early this year with allegations she had been improperly pressured to end a criminal prosecution of SNC Lavalin. The controversy saw her resign from cabinet and kicked out of the Liberal caucus. We want to hear what you think. Here's how to continue the conversation. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca. Find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/aptnnews. Also, you can follow APTN News on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more Indigenous news. Alberta prosecutors have stayed the charges in the death of 4-year-old Serenity. Serenity died while in the care of her relatives. They were charged with failing to provide the necessities of life. APTN's Chris Stewart is following this story.
On Tuesday, Crown prosecutors filed a motion to stay the charges against the pair who were Serenity's guardians. Serenity was in the care of relatives from the Muscatisse area south of Edmonton. They were each charged with failing to provide the necessities of life in 2017 after Serenity was brought to hospital in 2014. Doctors who examined her at the time said she had a severe brain injury and that she was underweight and had several bruises. Serenity's mother is not happy with the stay of proceedings for what the Crown says was a lack of evidence.
I'm very disappointed, very heartbroken. They had led me to believe that there was enough to go to trial, and then all of a sudden I found out there wasn't, and I was not aware of any other court hearings or anything. So, this was just a big surprise to me.
This case has been dragging through the courts for a few years now. The lawyer for the relatives say his client should never have been charged. Serenity's mother says she's going to fight to have the charges reinstated.
The fight's not over yet. I'm not giving up now.
We will have more on this story in the coming days. I'm Chris Stewart in Edmonton. Back to you at the desk, Brittany.
Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations Carolyn Bennett was in Iqaluit today for an apology to Inuit. Our Kent Driscoll was there and joins us now. So Kent, what was the apology all about?
Thank you. And yes, here in Iqaluit today, Dr. Carolyn Bennett apologized to the Inuit of Baffin Island for their treatment by the federal government between 1950 and 1975. Now, all of this was previously outlined in the Kikitani Truth Commission report, which is a report that the QIA, who received the apology, had put together outlining those historical problems with the treatment of Inuit here in the Eastern Arctic. That report was released back in 2010, and today it was acknowledged by the federal government, along with $20 million. $15 million of that the QIA is going to be putting into a fund that's going to generate interest to do more programming. The other $5 million is going to be spent on actual programming, including some particularly for dog-related activities. As the Truth Commission pointed out, the loss of sled dogs on Baffin Island was a major factor in forcing Inuit into communities. So Bennett officially apologized to a room full of Inuit of all ages. QIA President PJ Akiokuk, NTI President Luki Kuterik, and Nathan Obed from ITK were all on hand to receive the apology. And there were elders from all over Baffin Island. 44 elders flown in from every community on Baffin Island were here as well. And this is the third apology from the federal government to Inuit this calendar year. Back to you in Winnipeg.
A BC man is taking the fight for his life to the Human Rights Commission. More on that after the break. Here is Thursday's weather forecast starting on the East Coast. 26 in Charlottetown, 27 in Fredericton and Halifax. Rain and 11 in Nain. Happy Valley Goose Bay is a high of plus 18. Sun in Montreal with 26, 22 in Val d'Or, 24 in London and Toronto and Windsor, 20 in Wawa, mix of sun and cloud, and 24 in Sudbury. In northern Manitoba, lots of rain, 21 in God's Lake and Norway House, 26 in Gimli and Winnipeg, 24 in Dauphin. In Saskatchewan, sun and 20 in Swift Current, 24 in Yorkton, 24 in La Ronge, and in 23 in Buffalo Narrows. A big funding announcement for First Nations in Northern Ontario came this week. The federal government is giving $16 million to Anishinaabeg Employment and Training Services in Thunder Bay. They'll get the money over 10 years from their Indigenous Skills and Employment Training Program. The money is meant to provide training for individuals who are out of work and out of school. The Minister of Employment says the funding allows for long-term planning. She said Indigenous-led programs like this one are successful because they understand the different needs and barriers of the First Nations they serve.
That's the potential of making sure that there's adequate support for skills training in an equitable way across Canada. This has been, for me, one of the biggest privileges of my journey as a politician, is to work on issues of equity and work on issues of reversing discrimination from the previous Conservative government. We know that actually when you invest in people, when you invest in skills, when you empower communities, when you empower organizations, that they take that investment and they thrive and in fact contribute back to our communities and our economy writ large. So it's a very, very important project for Northern Ontario.
Culture and language are the focus of new projects coming to a Mi'kmaq community. Federal and provincial politicians were at Eskasone First Nation to announce $22 million in funding to help the community build a future for elders and youth. Angel Moore has the story.
Giganu is the name of the new long-term care facility planned for Eskasone First Nation. It means our house. Federal and provincial funding was announced for the project. Chief Denny says the facility will embrace Mi'kmaq language and culture, starting with the building's design.
So the elders felt that it would be appropriate if we use a turtle when we house this new facility, and we build on that. The image of the turtle.
Currently, elders have to leave the community for long-term care.
And it's like you're almost gone and forgotten. But here, it's on the reserve, and people will be, and your family, relatives would be able to drop in to see you.
The 48-bed facility is expected to create about 70 jobs. It will also build a stronger community.
They still get to learn from the elders. You know, some of the language, the culture, and I see that our reserve is like really rich in the culture and the language, and we've maintained it.
Eskasone bought 200 acres of land for the facility and future projects. The chief says the land is an investment for the youth.
So this land really helps us to put our future long-term care facility and possibly a future high school as well that we're still working on to build our new school.
The federal and provincial governments say this is a step towards reconciliation.
And it's an opportunity for elders to grow old and have their final days in the community. At the same time, I want to make sure that the young people see this as an opportunity for jobs, an opportunity to build a life for themselves in their own community.
But that was not the only announcement.
For the second project, I'm very proud to announce that 4,600 residents of the Eskasone First Nation will also finally be able to gain access to high-speed internet.
The community has struggled with slow dial-up internet. Soon everyone will be better connected.
Well, having fiber optic is a big thing, so now we get to be internationally, globally, communicating to other people, and I thought it was just a really good thing to do for our place and our community, I'm glad.
These projects are set to begin as soon as possible. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Eskasone.
An organization that helps First Nations in remote Ontario recruit and support teachers is gearing up for another school year. The group was just in Thunder Bay working with 30 teachers. Here's APTN's Willow Fiddler now with how Teach for Canada prepares them for a life in a northern community.
It's a program that aims to keep more teachers in Northern First Nations. By preparing teachers for life in the remote north, Teach for Canada hopes to reduce turnover rates on reserves. One teacher says turnover rates impacts young people's education.
So they get used, they build a relationship for a year or two with some of the teachers, and then they leave. And then they have to start all over building another relationship the next year.
Teach for Canada started 5 years ago. The nonprofit organization works with First Nations to recruit teachers and get them ready for life in an isolated First Nation. And because of the high turnover, get them to sign on for a 2-year commitment.
It saves us the time to look for teachers, but we still fall short of teachers because we're a big community, and I'm sure some other communities have that same problem.
Nancy Wazwa is the education director for Ibmatung, a fly-in First Nation 350 kilometers north of Thunder Bay. She says new teachers don't know what to expect.
What their expectations will be like when you come, especially to an isolated community, the challenges. Yeah.
What are some of those challenges?
Well, for my community, we have a state of emergency as I speak, but but it is my prayer that our community will be serviced, with those emergencies that are identified. So, and I'm hoping that it will not stop teachers from applying for and coming back to the community, because we do the hard work and the labor to keep our community moving forward.
Ibmatung has been under a boil water advisory for 18 years. There's a state of emergency in effect. Alarming levels of chemicals in the tap water will do that. Wazwa says despite those challenges, some teachers can fit in.
They stand out in the community when we have a crisis. Like, say we have a trauma in the community, they're there at the community hall preparing lunch or even doing radio programs to keep our radio open. They do a lot of stuff, that go beyond their teaching.
Ashley Vandenberg is originally from Ottawa. She spent the last 2 years teaching in Lac Seul, an Anishinaabe First Nation 400 kilometers north of Thunder Bay. She learned a few lessons herself.
Be open to learning and being a student, and learning their ways, Don't come in thinking that you know everything.
Wazwa says education in the north isn't limited to students in classrooms.
We tell the teachers you're welcome. Go out fishing and learn about our ways of life.
Katrina Reyes is from a small community in the Philippines. She just spent a year teaching in Japan. Now she is looking forward to teaching in Poplar Hill, where she's heard the fishing is pretty good.
I look forward to that, and I look forward to getting my feet into lots and lots of snow, because we never had that back in the Philippines.
Teach for Canada has almost 100 teachers in 19 First Nations in Northern Ontario, but Wazwa says they need more.
I just wanted to say I'm still looking for teachers. Connect with me.
Willow Fiddler, APTN National News, Thunder Bay.
Time for another quick break. Coming up, Winnipeggers rally to honor a beloved street artist. Here's the rest of Thursday's weather forecast, picking back up in northern Alberta. 19 in rain in Grand Prairie, 18 in Peace River. Some sun and 24 in Calgary, 27 in Medicine Hat. In BC, 21 in Tofino, 22 in Quesnel. 22 in Smithers, and 21 in Sandspit. In the Yukon, 19 in Whitehorse and Mayo, 16 in Beaver Creek. In the NWT, more rain, 17 in Yellowknife, 15 in Wrigley. 10 in Colville Lake, and a high of 8 in Inuvik. 8 in Chesterfield, some sun, and 14 in Repulse Bay. 8 in Clyde River, and 14 and sunny in Arctic Bay. A Winnipeg restaurant owner is raising money to pay tribute to a beloved street artist in the city, and the reception has been outstanding. Krista Gunther started a GoFundMe to help pay for funeral costs, but what she's witnessed is a community coming together to celebrate one of its own.
Here's my friend Daniel, who does all those beautiful art pieces at the cafe.
Daniel Martin spent much of his life on the streets of Winnipeg. It's where he made a living selling his art. And it's where Krista Gunther met him nearly 4 years ago.
I was driving by and I saw this man, holding up a piece of artwork, just a piece of paper. And then as I drove past, I thought, you know what? I'm opening an Indigenous restaurant. I could use some artwork. Maybe I can help him out and buy a piece.
Gunther was in the process of opening her restaurant, Feast Cafe Bistro. The encounter led to what started as a business relationship.
Daniel, how long does it take for you to do one painting?
About 45 minutes.
But eventually the relationship morphed into a friendship so close, Gunther considered Martin her guardian angel. Last month, this became a reality when the 62-year-old passed away due to complications related to cancer. After that, Gunther started a GoFundMe campaign to help pay for funeral costs. Within a week, it surpassed its goal with nearly 100 people donating money.
He's touched the hearts of so many people, and I'm not surprised actually, because that was Daniel. He was jolly, he was humble, he was kind.
Martin started drawing at the age of 24 after meeting another Indigenous artist.
Daniel said, I want to try and draw. And so he started to try and draw and realized that he had a gift. So all that time as a young boy, didn't know he had this beautiful gift of drawing.
Martin was placed in residential school at the age of 8. As a teen, he lived in various group homes. Trauma led him to a life of addictions, but drawing helped change that.
So Daniel's been drawing for 38 years, but he's also proud to say that he's been sober from all kinds of alcohol, drugs for 20 years before he passed away, and he was very proud of that. So he found a lot of healing in his artwork.
Martin lived at Main Street Project before his death. Gunther plans to donate extra funds to the shelter.
Don't underestimate people like Daniel, because they can bless you more than you could ever bless them.
A service will take place Thursday morning at the church Martin frequented. Daniel was known to many here at APTN, and his talents will be missed. But before we go tonight, a Calgary resident captured some unexpected visitors in their backyard. Baby bobcats were found frolicking on the lawn furniture on the patio. The curious cats then moved on to the barbecue and climbed pretty much every other item in the backyard. No sign of Mom, though, which is probably a good thing for whoever recorded this. And that's your APTN National News for Wednesday. Catch up on anything you've missed at our website, aptnnews.ca, and be sure to download the APTN News app on your phone to keep up on news as it unfolds. I'm Brittany Hobson. Have a great night.